Welcome to the Community Music Learning IJCM Conversation Series. My name is Roger Mantie, and together with Alicia at Banffy-Hall, I'm hosting this series. We are here today with Professor Lee Willingham from Wilfrid Laurier University in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, just down the road a little ways from where I am in Toronto. Lee, your background, like mine, is in music education. Can you tell us how and why you became involved with the field of community music?
Thanks, Roger. It's good to be with you this day. I was a passionate music educator and got a great job right out of Teachers College in a suburban high school, fairly middle-class, affluent area. And there was a capacity to build a music program there, and it was successful. And when we were at sort of the peak of our success, I got statistics that said approximately 1 out of 10 students in our school takes music. It was later on at an ISME conference in Bologna in 2008 that I encountered the community music world full on. And it suddenly occurred to me that the barriers of the institution and the structures of the institution really did not make music accessible to everybody that wanted music and was doing. They were doing music without us. So in short, it was the idea that music's for everybody. The structures of our institutions sometimes mitigate the accessibility of making music together unless you're taking music at a specific grade and with a course code getting a credit for it. And so that was the genesis of my engagement in community music.
At the Scarborough campus of the University of Toronto, where I teach, we have a community music area of focus for the undergraduate program. The degree programs at Wilfrid Laurier University in community music are, to my knowledge, rather distinct in the Canadian higher music education landscape. And you, for people who don't know, were the primary architect behind getting the degree programs going at Wilfrid Laurier. Can you talk to us a little bit about your motivations and your experience and how the degree programs have worked out?
Well, it's quite a story, and I'm still coming to grips with where we are after 10 years of really, diving in. So more than 10 years ago, actually around 2010, we started a research center called the Laurier Center for Music in the Community. Now, at the time, I had a dean who loved symmetry. And we had a Master of Music Therapy program and a Music Therapy Research Center. And we started a Laurier Center for Music in the Community Research Center. And he said, it's asymmetrical right now. We need to have a MA in community music to match the Master of Music Therapy. And so in 2013, we started a part-time MA in community music. And that evolved into a full-time program. And we've had well over 100 grads now in the 11 years we've been operating. In 2016, there was a bit of a beginning of an enrollment crisis in faculties of music when I got an email from the dean saying, "What do you think about a Bachelor of Music in Community Music?" Because we think economically it would kind of subvent some of the financial challenges we were facing. And I said, well, of course, I love the idea. And so eventually hired faculty and put together a very solid Bachelor of Music program that wasn't necessarily intended to feed our master's program. It was simply to give students, like I mentioned at the beginning, accessibility to higher level music instruction, developing their creative potentials, connecting them to community and community service, following the principles of community music, the foundational theoretical principles of service and social concerns, and enhancing well-being. So that started in 2016, and it's thriving. Early on in our discussions, we proposed a PhD program. People will know that when you propose a program, it sort of falls on your shoulders without any compensation or release time to create the program. And at a university, at a PhD level, there are many approval bodies, hoops and ladders, what I call the gatekeeping of curriculum and programming. And so it's 3-4 years it took to create a PhD in music with dual fields, community music and music therapy. So it is unique, and it's been a labor of passion and love because we see results almost immediately. You instantly see people responding to their own connections to music in ways they bring. So just to make it super clear, we intentionally create a diverse population of our grad school. So we will have students from all over the world, to name a few: Lebanon, South Africa, Ghana, India, Iran, China. They bring music to us that may be unfamiliar to us, or their traditions and cultures we don't have expertise in. But we also have music teachers and church and faith-based musicians and people that are classical professionals. So that diversity, intentionally designed, brings this texture of interest and uniqueness, I think, that has cemented relationships and encouraged careers and enabled people to maybe do more than they ever thought they could do.
I'm just wondering, though, based on your experiences and what you've learned from having gone through that, do you have any advice for other people who might be interested in designing or implementing, similar programs in their universities?
Have we got a couple of hours? I mean, so I explored, as we were insisted to do, explored the programs in other places. So Limerick, University of Limerick, and York, St. John University, New York University, where David Elliott was doing some community music there. We looked at programs, even in Canadian universities, there was the occasional course in community music. So we kind of collected all of these themes, topics, courses. I think I was driving home from a conference with my colleague Gerard Young one day, and I said, I've got it. I know what we need to do. We need 5 core courses for our MA program. We need an applied placement, and we need a research project. And then we've got to open up something for an elective. So that just sort of came, bam, we've got it. Part of it was influenced by my doctoral studies at OISE, University of Toronto, where there was such an eclectic field of opportunities for a person in my area in education. So there were a couple of things we did based on that. So how do you mobilize an idea? Like, how do you take an idea? Now I've got it on paper. I've even got a Venn diagram, right? I'm ready. What do I do with this? So there's a mechanism in our university where you make a proposal, you've got your dean's approval, and you've got your faculty council approval. And they say, you might fly, it might not, but go for it. We write a brief. There are 3 parts of a brief. The first brief is your program description. It's about 50, 60 pages long. It covers a lot of things. The second brief is faculty that might teach it and the full CVs and all of that. The third brief is your evaluation, external evaluation system. Who's going to come and check it out? So that happened, and it took 3 years, and I had lots of editing, and a lot of people sent things back to me. My grad studies faculty, my acting dean. I mean, I got really frustrated with the minutia, because that's not the way I work, the minutia of editing and revising these detailed things. But once it's in place, then the green light is recruit and get some offers of admission out there. So I guess from maybe 2012 to 2016, that was my spare time hobby. The other thing I would say, so with the PhD was very different because I had a really strong working relationship with my colleague in music therapy, Heidi Ahonen. And somehow we had a symbiosis that was quite magical. We could go for a coffee and come up with, an idea on a napkin that would become policy eventually. So we designed a PhD program that was really one-off in Canada and United States. It has a little bit of a European flavor to it, but it essentially is not course-based and it's research-driven. So my advice to anybody, to answer your question long way around, is develop some relationships with colleagues that share your vision, and somehow you can mobilize things much more quickly with a critical mass behind you.
So I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about research and scholarship. And given that this is the IJCM conversation series, I'd like to actually talk about 3 of the articles that you have published in the International Journal of Community Music. So the one that you co-authored with Kristen Anderson, Environment, Intention, and Intergenerational Music Making, facilitating participatory music making in diverse contexts of community music. Can you talk to us about them?
So Kristen, works in incarcerated settings in Scotland. And I've done a tiny bit of work in that kind of environment in our region here in Southern Ontario, not as much as she. And so we set out what are best practices that can include, and what are barriers, and how do we engage people in a meaningful way? It's not just a superficial way, but in some kind of a authentic, meaningful, art-making way where they can express themselves. And one of the things that triggered this with me, I was in London and I met with Kristen, and she took me to Southwark. There's a community center there, and there was an art exhibit, visual art exhibit, drawn and created by incarcerated people. It deeply moved me that there was this expression in visual art that could evoke a strong response in a music educator. And so that was kind of the back canvas, if you will, pardon the pun, for that study. So she dived into her experiences in Scottish prisons, and then I worked more from my pedagogical experience as a music educator in how could we adapt various music educational principles and pedagogical strategies in these a variety of settings. Now, the collaboration came out of a project that Jenny Henley and Lee Higgins did in England, and we would get together once a year, basically for 3 years, and discuss our various contexts and experiences in our work. And so I immediately bonded with Kristen on that one because of her passion for working with incarcerated people.
The third article of yours that I'd like to talk about is the one called "Drum Circles in Community Music: Reconciling the Difference," and it's from 2017 for people who want to look it up. And I mean, obviously, I'm not trying to privilege any articles, but I have used this one in my teaching quite a bit because you have done, at Wilfrid Laurier and in the Kitchener-Waterloo community, you've done quite a bit with the Indigenous community there. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us about this and help us understand, what motivated you to do this article and what you think its main takeaways are. And
co-authors Kelly Lorilla. She identifies as a Sami First Nations from Northern Finland, but was born in Northern Ontario to an Irish father. So she carries both what we would call settler and Indigenous identities. When she came to Southern Ontario, she connected with a nation here called Anishinaabe and was adopted by them and has become a songkeeper, knowledge keeper, and has been recognized by an elder as a First Nations Canadian. She worked with a group of women, in English they were called the Good-Hearted Women Singers, who mostly were survivors of federal institutions such as residential schools and a variety of other unfortunate chapters in Canadian history. She got them together with a drum circle and taught them songs, and they became a powerful force, a voice for Indigenous women in our community and beyond. She encountered one day a public relations officer from the Waterloo Region Police Services. So a tall white man in a black uniform with badges and braids and guns. People that aren't from Canada may not know that there's a incredibly toxic history, or a history of toxic relationships between police and Indigenous people. He said, we have a choir of men, a male police choir that would love to sing with you. So again, imagine the cultural, challenges here. It happened, and it happened on our campus, and I facilitated that first concert. So they had a venue, they had tech, they had all the stuff you need for a concert. It was really powerful. And this continued for several years. Out of this, Kelly said, I want to write an academic article, and she's finished her PhD in social work. She wanted to write an academic article, but she didn't want to write in the academic traditional style. She wanted it to be narrative. She wanted to use Indigenous teachings, which are essentially oral teachings. They pass them down from one elder to another, one knowledge keeper to another, and they're considered gifts. This knowledge are considered gifts. And so my role was to comment on her narrative and make it quasi-academic. I think it showed the picture, and it also showed the contrast between how, our academic traditions create barriers for people that come from a narrative, oral narrative tradition, or where they share their knowledge as opposed to protect their knowledge.
No, that's a great point, and for what it's worth, not just as a follow-up to this article or your encouragement as an IJCM board member, but we do have a special issue on Indigenous issues in community music in the work.
Can I just share one more little thing?
Certainly.
So one of the passions that our community music team at Laurier has been addressing is decolonizing our programming. And so out of that, long story short, came connections to musicians from the Black community here. And so this past weekend, the third Black Music Festival and Conference took place. It was massive, and we were able to have the sort of legends of Black music in Canada with us, the people in the 70s and 80s that got it on the television music shows and the radio production, and then some of the key artists. And I'm really pleased with our community music, Laurier's involvement and partnership in something that's now had a massive effect in our community. So you can look it up, the Grand River Black Music Festival and Conference. It's got a lovely website. And again, community music at the Academy can have huge effects on people in the wider communities.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate that. Thanks for your time today. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Community Music Learning IJCM Conversation Series.
Thank you.